Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Core Dev call number 63. I'm going to just pull up the agenda here. It's going to be the agenda number 102 on the URL. And the first thing we're going to do is review previous decisions made and action items if you click on that link. So there weren't any decisions made that we need to go over specifically, just a lot of discussion over some of the EIPs. Some of the actions we did put down that we want to check on. Reach out to the authors of EIP 615 to discuss the questions around the EIP, especially the option of splitting the EIP into smaller, more digestible components. So that is. Who's the author of EIP 615? Is that. I had it
That's
on the tip of
that's
my tongue.
Greg. That's Greg and Zam, I believe.
Oh, Brooklyn and them. Okay. Did Greg respond on Gitter at all? There was a lot of chatter on there, so I didn't catch everything. Don't know if anyone else caught it either. If not, we can reach out to him specifically for next time.
I don't think there was much more discussion specifically around that past the AMA date where they talked a lot about all of those.
Let's go ahead and just table this EIP then. It sounds like there hasn't been attempts to really push it forward so far. If anyone wants to check with Greg, that'd be okay, but I haven't seen real attempts from the authors to push it forward.
There have been, and my understanding is that it's been pushed. There's been a lot of pushback. I didn't participate in those talks, but yes, um, like I gathered from conversations with during the guest stand up that yeah, that's not really bringing any improvement in the short term. And yes, so they didn't want to integrate it immediately because well,
Okay,
yeah.
that sounds good. In that case, yeah, we'll table that one and see in the future if they want to split that into smaller pieces, and over time maybe implement other things on that are more simple. So, 62.2 have an in-depth discussion on EIP 663. Um, Let me see which one is that. Unlimited swap and dupe instructions, and that was from Axic. And I believe Axix, is he on this call? Yeah, you are. Did we have more conversation on Gitter about that, Axic? Oh, and you're muted.
Says he doesn't have a mic.
Ah, okay, you can just text chat. There wasn't any progress made on it. Okay, we can work on that more since it sounds like there's going to be a few EIPs that are going to need that to happen. Can you lead the discussion on the All Core Devs chat just to see what the temperature is about this EIP so we can do a final decision on it as soon as possible?
Says he doesn't have a mic.
Yeah, he's typing in the text chat. Okay, he confirmed that he can put that on his to-do list. All right. The next item: perform a full benchmark of EIP 1108. So EIP 1108, I'm just like Googling these as it comes up. That's going to be reducing the Alt BN 128 precompile gas cost. And I know Antonio and Zach Williamson were working on that specifically. And I remember us before talking about them doing a benchmark. Are that either of them on the call today?
I can actually speak for Antonio, but Zach's primarily been driving this latest version of the EAP. I guess it would be helpful for me just to know what you guys wanted to see beyond the benchmarking that's already been done.
Um, I think I wasn't on the last call where this issue was expanded. Can anyone fill us in on what that specific action item was supposed to entail?
Okay, well, I don't want to take up too much time if you guys don't have anything. But I'll talk to Antonio and circle up with Zach as well, and hopefully have some progress for you guys on GitHub sometime next week.
Thanks. And have them just reach out on the All Core Devs Gitter channel so we can keep up with that and take notes from there. That's going to be the most efficient way to do it. Thank you.
Yep.
Discussion required with Jordy Bellina and Axic around the options between EIP 1109 and EIP 2046. So that's between 1109. Oh, what was 1109? Actually, Jordy, you're here, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, could you just quickly go over the what those two EIPs are and if a conversation has been had and decisions made over which one would be the better option to go with for the upcoming hard fork if we decide to do that at all?
Have not checked this new one. I can talk about mine. Mine is very simple. Mainly is the cost of the of calling a precompiled smart contracts is very expensive right now, and the idea is to reduce. First, it was an EIP that tried to reduce the cost of the call or the static call, but the developers of the clients, they suggested that they didn't want to touch the call code, and it was better to implement a new opcode for calling smart contracts. And that's the work that was done in 1109. And I have no more comments about that.
Okay. And then, Axic, if you wanted to type anything, no discussion with Jordy in the past month regarding this. Okay. So we'll keep that as an action item. If Alex and Jordy could get together on in the core devs chat or in an ETH Magicians forum. Axic also said that 2046 is the original version Jordy mentioned. So it looks like 1109 is the newer one. Is that right? Even though it's an older EIP number. Is 1109 like the newer one, or is that the older one? Like as far as which one was created first?
1109 was originally the one that added a new call rather than a new opcode, I believe. I don't know if it's been updated to supersede the later ETH number though.
Yeah,
Understood.
was done because the core devs in a core devs, they decided that it was not good to touch the code of the calc code. So that's why it was fully changed to this to introduce this new opcode.
Understood. Okay, Axic, what's your position on that? Is that something that you'd be willing to agree on in order to go with what was it? 1109 rather than 2046. Am I getting that right, everybody? I might be getting that backwards.
No, you're getting it right.
Okay.
And just to note that this is one of the 3 or 4 either or decisions that need to be made about the hard fork.
Okay, so we need to get more people on that. And as we're going through these, if everyone goes back to the agenda, there is a link under 2.A about the dependency map that James Hancock made. As we're discussing some of these action items, you can actually match the EIPs to this dependency tree, which is really helpful because it shows what needs to be decided somewhat in a distinct order in order to get certain EIPs chosen for the upcoming hard fork. Because some of them are basically incompatible with the others, as in there's like 4 EIPs and we have to choose one of them. Back to the action
Hudson,
items.
I just viewed the new one, and I can comment on that the problem of this new proposal of 2046 is that static calls, you need to load the code. You don't need to load the state, but you need to load the code. So this, so you can reduce the cost, but you cannot reduce as much as it would be recommended for precompiled smart contracts. Think that there are precompiled smart contracts like SHA 256 and even some of them that are lower, that you want to have a very low gas cost. We are talking about 3, 4, 5, 6 gas costs, some of them maybe. So this one, it's a static call, will have to, you cannot go that low of the in the gas cost by just reducing the static cost, because you have to load the code of a static call.
Okay, so you're also, so is what you're suggesting to not lower the cost?
What I'm saying is that I will not touch the static call as it is right now, and I will create a new opcode for that. Just because of that, because the static, it works for any smart contract, and you need to load the code of any smart contract. So you can have an attack that consists of having a smart contract that calls many different many different contracts, even if they are static, and the client will have to load all of them. So you cannot reduce the gas very much with the static call. So that's why I think it's better option to just go with a new opcode that's specific for precompiled smart contracts. And then the cost of
Okay,
this is just two, or something, a normal minimum gas cost, like another instruction.
okay. Thank you for that. This is something that you'll need to discuss on a specific form in coordination with AXIC so that you can lay out your viewpoints and people can discuss it so that we can have more coordination for the next call. And we'll need to, if y'all can talk on the All Core Devs channel, that'd be perfect to say, do you want to do this on an Eth Magicians forum or set like a specific time in the All Core Devs chat? Some of the EIPs have been doing that, and that seems to be working pretty well. So if you could coordinate that with AXIC, that'd be perfect.
Okay, I will.
Thank you so much.
And I can help. I can help coordinate that too, Jordy.
Oh, awesome, James. Yeah. Okay, so the next one is 62.5, James Hancock to update the wiki and meta EIP 1962 with decisions around the EIPs. I think the meta was updated, right?
The meta EIP. There,
The meta EIP.
there isn't really much to update on it. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah,
there
that's what
hasn't been
that's
anything that's really moved forward past that point. That is my understanding. There are some things we could say are more soft no's and softer yeses. There is, unless someone else has other feedback.
that's kind of what I'm feeling like as well, but it's good that we're making some progress with the soft no's and soft yeses. We'll keep that action item on the board, just because it needs to be kept updated, and we can check in on it for the next meeting as well. All right, so the next one is that EIP 1283 requires a new EIP number and section discussing the difference between the original EIP 1283, which was removed from the Constantinople, and this new EIP. Um, so is that the one from Way? Let me see,
Uh,
1283.
yeah, I think we can just use the 7006 that's fixed for 1283 as a new EIP number.
Okay, and does there need to be any changes to the authors on there? I think if I recall that. Oh, because it has Alex and Yoav. Do you want to be added to that authors list way?
I'm both okay. It's okay for me.
You mean either way,
Either
or
way.
okay, sounds good. So the decision made there is that we're going to have EIP 1706 um, take over for EIP 1283, and EIP 1283 will be withdrawn. Way, if you could go into EIP 1283 and do an update to change the status to withdrawn and just leave a note in there or a comment or something that which EIP supersedes it, that'd be excellent.
Yeah, sure. But one issue is 7006 has is written as a dependency of 1283. Uh, I'm not sure like how that part will work because uh, technically what we are doing is apply both EIPs. I think.
Oh, I see. So then I guess if you're applying both EIPs, should everything just be combined into one? Is that kind of the way we should go, or do you have a recommendation?
Uh, I mean, from this point, it's just about documentation, but I don't. I actually like from client implementation point of view. I actually think if we just say we include both EIP again, the 1283 and 7006, that will work because most client, uh, like if like the implementation for 1283 would not need any change. We just need to add an additional condition cost for 7006. So it's kind of if we set the config parameters in the plant implementation, it's actually quite independent. I just the we need 1283 to actually implement and 7006 to actually implement the complete net gas metering.
This is just from Alex that he recommends that combining both of them into a brand new EIP. So then 1283 and 1706 would be superseded by this one is recommended. I'm reading the chat for him because it's popping up.
All right, thank you. Um, yeah, I agree with Alex that it would be a little less confusing if we combined it all into one. Um, would that so? But it sounds like would that provide complications in the code for the fact that 1203 was or 1283 was already implemented?
I actually think like I don't have strong opinions like either way it works because this is just about documentation. But like I have a tendency that probably keep 1283 and keep 7006 would be better because I mean, at least for party, it will create some confusion about which EIP number we actually use for the config parameter. Because right now we can just implement 1283 and add another config parameter for 7006. But if we add a new EIP number, then it will have roughly the same functionality of 1283 and 7006. Then it's I mean it's a little bit complication for client implementations.
In 1706
Okay.
imply 1283? You just turn on 1706 and it gets 1283 with it in the code, or is your code not set up to handle that elegantly?
Sorry, I didn't quite hear the question.
Can you set it up so when you turn on 1706, it also turns on 1283? Whether or not there's a flag for it, or is your code not able to handle that elegantly and it would look like a big ugly hack?
Yeah, so it will handle it elegantly. Like we can have the like if we can turn on 1283 and turn on 7006 separately without any issue. It's like it's the because the changes in the code are in completely different places. Just we need those two EIP combined together to implement NetGuys meter.
This is from Alex that probably getting input from the testing team would be the deciding factor. And that might be a good action item to follow back up on next week.
Okay, great. So between now and then, James, can you coordinate with Wei and potentially Alex and Yoav from Taboo Key to talk to the testing team, or even just talk to the testing team yourself and figure out what's the
Yep,
best?
I'll reach out to Dimitri and see what he says.
Okay, that sounds great. Let's go to the next one, run through these. Where was I? Engage Ronan Sanford and Brian Eisenbach to discuss EIP 1344, which EIP 1344, 1959, or 1965 should be implemented. Are either of them here today? Ronan or Brian? Okay, I think Brian said he was going to try to join, and then I haven't heard since. Um, so we'll keep that action item on the board and try to reach out to them again. Action item 62.8, EIP 1352 needs more work done to answer questions posed by the all core devs. EIP 1352 is specify restricted address range for precompiles and system contracts, and that's from Axic again. He said there's no progress from that, so we'll keep chugging along on that.
One of the
In the
one of the
Oh,
discussions
go
on
ahead.
these magicians from Charles from the EEA said this would make a lot of their precompiled contract work a lot easier if they know a range they could put it in, and with the registry. So there's support outside of core Ethereum for a precompiled range and a general registry for these, and if it existed, they would use it for their permissioning contracts or specify in the EEA specifications.
Does anyone remember what the opposition to this was?
I think it was that there was no technical impact to the code.
Oh, so this would just be, instead of a core EIP, this would just be a meta?
Possibly. I mean, there's some things that it could work with the code. If the precompiled calls knew that there's only a range, it would make verification quicker. But those are some hard fork features we can add on a later date. And if we just meta a reserved range for now and meta a registry for these, we can go for the technical implementations that would help verification. Since we're not doing any sort of verification, it looks like in Istanbul, it does rise to the level of just a meta right now.
Is there anyone who's opposed to this? Because it seems like a pretty easy go ahead.
So it was supposed to be easy, but there are some edge cases that have to be clarified. For example, if like what happened, for example, do we allow to deploy contracts at these addresses if by any luck the address will match the restricted subset? And I think it was Martin Svender that requested, asked some questions and requested to clarify that. I'm guessing here that what Axic meant by no progress, it's all of these hasn't been clarified yet.
Okay, let's try to clarify those before the next call. And that'll be something specific we can target, especially with conversations with Martin, because he's been active in the All Core Devs Getter chat. The next action item is that is it EIP 2045 needs further discussion, and that EIP, let me type that one in, particle gas cost for EVM opcodes, and that one is by Casey Detrio and Alex Bergzazi. Casey, can you comment on this? Has there been more discussion on this or any kind of resolutions? Or Axic in the chat, either one.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Yeah, well, I guess in brief, the next step for this one is to do further benchmarks on EVM1 and propose what the new gas costs would be for each opcode. Another thing we'd like to see is other client teams such as Geth and Parity taking a look at the optimizations used in EVM1 and trying to port those optimizations to Geth and Parity.
Is this something that we should table for after Istanbul, in your opinion, based on the need for more of these benchmarks and collaboration with other client teams that may be busy?
Well, no, that's why we submitted it by May 17th, because we'd like to see it in Istanbul.
Okay. Well, we can keep looking at it then. Um, Other client teams, is this something that can get done before the next all core devs call? Is there an appetite for wanting to do this?
Unless there's a gas cost adjustment that would bring it down inside of Istanbul, I don't see the real impact, and I'm not seeing any gas cost
Well,
proposals to go
well,
fractional.
yeah, that's what it is. It is. We need to do the benchmarks to then, do more thorough benchmarks to see what the new gas costs would be. But we know just roughly that it'd probably be, for computational opcodes, the gas costs would be at least 10 times cheaper.
So after we put the schedule together, May 17th was supposed to be the EIPs ready, and I would have expected this benchmarking done before calling an EIP ready, to be honest.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm
there's a
at
lot
too.
of placeholder EIPs. So, for example, the Blake 2B was not ready at May 17th, and they're just now refining it. So you'd have to hold all EIPs to the same standard.
Yeah,
I
and
think
and
that's
then also the person who's going back and forth most on this was Martin, and since he's not here today, that is the in the all core in the AMA, that was the primary discussion was between those parties. So without him here, I would say it'd be good to keep the discussion going.
okay. We can keep the discussion going. As far as what Dano just brought up, James, because you've looked at all these EIPs over and over again, thankfully to make charts and other pieces of data. What's your opinion on the readiness of some of these EIPs and if we should stick to a more stricter set of guidelines and be a little more assertive about cutting off some of these that weren't completely ready? Was it the case that the vast majority of them weren't completely ready in the same way this and other EIPs like Blake 2B were?
I would say most of them are, and the discussion at the time, like the week before that, before the deadline, and the call before that deadline, I think you may have missed that call. Was
I
yeah
might have. Yeah.
was that this is just to get like the placeholder idea is okay, whether or not something like there's still a lot of work that needs to be done to get everything in, and the work is now on the EIP editors to get that work done. And
So EIP authors and
authors,
to
yes,
champion
yes,
it, and then client developers to implement them and so forth.
That
yeah.
was a call that Tim chaired, and a lot of the pressure to just get the ideas out was coming from Boris, who isn't on this call right now.
Well, and actually from Alexi.
And Alexi, yeah. Boris was trying to get Alexi to get the state ret stuff in from Alexi, and Alexi didn't feel he was quite ready.
And so then he had the placeholder. The idea is just getting the placeholders in, and currently to get something merged to draft. It's basically does it format and does it have some kind of spec like that? That alone is a really. I just feels like going a little bit backwards on what was already decided. To say that now.
Yeah, I agree. It's going backwards, so it's something we can't do. We will have to figure out this conundrum of having so many EIPs so we don't avoid this problem the next time. And just have stricter standards, and that's the bottom line, I think. Dana, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, we can go on because it was expressed and very well socialized. But I think this illustrates the problem in the next round when we go for hard fork, that there is a EIP ready date, which is why I proposed a EIP proposed date 2 months ahead, where we have this game where people put their good ideas out, but then they have 2 months to finalize it.
Yep. We'll have to do that better next time.
And the current was just to be draft was the requirement, and then even that was made a little bit more wishy-washy at the time. So that language around the specification and what that means would be important if we're going to get anyone to change.
Okay.
Back to the original question about the fractional. It does seem like a lot of work for a value that I'm not immediately seeing. So those benchmarks would be very illuminating.
We have benchmarks in the EWASM/benchmarking repo roughly of the speedups compared to Gethin parity. But even if you just compare the benchmarks by time, there's reductions to be made even against the Gethin parity speeds. So then there'd be additional reductions. And yes, we're working as fast as we can to put out more thorough benchmark reports and hypothetical gas analyses and so forth.
So could you also put in there what's the harm if we don't go to fractional? If we floor it at 1, could we inflate the others? Does it have that much of an impact on the style and level of smart contracts? The more elaboration on that, I think, would help too.
Yeah, I mean, that's briefly mentioned in the EIP, and it's a complicated issue because it relates to, what would the consequences be of increasing the price of S-store and S-load, to enable boosting the gas limit without increasing the rate of state bloat. So this is an alternative to that.
ASIC in chat said the main benefit to the potential to implement certain precompiled proposals as native EVM code. So I would assume that we do EVM instead of the precompile.
Yeah, I mean, I would say there's a lot of benefit. It's not just it. I mean, the gas reductions are so significant. It makes implementing certain precompiles as implementing them in EVM and still be cheap enough. And I mean, in general, all computation will be a lot cheaper. So
could we just shift everything to left by 1024?
I'm not sure I get the joke.
just make gas cost 10 to 1,000 times more, and then we get the fractional from there.
That was Martin's feedback in the AMA, was making 1 be something and increasing the rest, and then you would need to change the gas limit too.
Well, Martin said something a little bit different than that.
Okay, but, anyway, keep going.
So just shifting the gas cost, I think that would have an impact on all wallet and user transactions, and and the way gas prices are done on the wallet side, which we don't want to we don't want to affect that.
Can you add that to the rationale?
It is in the rationale.
Thanks.
Yep.
I mean, I just want to comment that like if you do it in the cost of other opcodes, then it won't have this issue.
Sorry, I was trying to follow, but it's subtle issue. And
yeah, I was just saying that if we reduce the gas cost like into a fraction, then it can have issue with backward capability. So it could have some sort of like the reentry bug like we have for Casinovo. So we may need some account versioning or other sort of precautions to make sure we don't have any vulnerabilities. But instead, if we raise the gas cost of other opcodes instead of reducing the opcodes, then we won't have this issue.
Well, so the reentry bug was caused by reducing the gas cost of S-store, which we're not going to suggest. That's why it's only for computational opcodes. Now, it's true that there might be similar cases, which would have similar, negative effects side effects that we'd like to avoid. Detailing or investigating and analyzing and figuring out what all the invariants are that we'd like to preserve, and if gas cost reductions say computational opcodes, not S-store, would break any of these invariants. That's further study analysis needs to be done on that. But we also know that raising the cost of S-store would also break many invariants. So But so we know that there's invariants that raising the cost would break, but there's not any that we know of where lowering the cost of computational opcodes, there's not any known side effects from that, but there are known side effects for raising the cost of the storage opcodes.
Hey, we need to
on
we need to take this offline because we have a lot more to get through today. Sorry for interrupting. But if we could take this to the All Core Devs chat, and is there an Eth Magicians forum, Casey?
Yeah, there is actually.
Okay, post that in the All Core Devs chat, and Way, if you can jump in there, maybe Dano too, and sort through this. We can have James also talk to Martin and others about getting in there, so we can figure this one out before the next meeting,
Yeah, that'd be
hopefully.
great. Happy to continue the discussion online or offline.
Thank you. Yeah, online, offline. There was someone in the comments of the agenda that said they had to leave early, and I want to respect their time. So who was it that said they had to leave early and wanted to talk about something before I go through the rest of the action items?
I think that was Alex Vlasov, and he had to leave earlier than he expected. But I'm here to represent some of the topics of 1962 instead.
Got it. And are you going to be here the whole meeting?
Not really, but I'll be here enough to represent it. I have to run soon as well.
Okay. All right. If you have some that you want to go over specifically, let's just do it now. That'll be easiest.
Sure. Awesome. So I think I don't know what has been discussed before in the All Core Dev chat, but should I introduce the IP or we're good with that?
Yeah, go ahead and introduce it. Now, just before we do that though, is this something that's going to be in Istanbul or is this a new EIP?
So I think the hope is for it to be there.
Okay. And has it already been proposed? Are you aware?
So 1962 is there is an EIP in the EIP's repo. There's a bunch of work that Alex did, but I'm not sure about the exact status.
Okay, no problem. Oh, this is the EC arithmetic and pairing with runtime definitions, right?
Exactly, that one with the pairings
Okay.
and yeah, exactly.
Okay, yeah. If you can spend a minute going over that, and then we'll see
All right, sure.
where we can best move the discussion.
Cool. So the DCIP introduces a precompile that allows for efficient operations on arbitrary elliptic curves that are represented in short Weierstrass form. It supports four kinds of operations. It supports elliptic curve additions, multi-exponentiations, scalar multiplications like single ones, and pairing operations of some of the elliptic curve families that are known to be good for pairings. So that's the background. What's the current status is that Alex has implemented all the proposed spec in Rust. And there is a repo that implements all of that together with this binary interface that this precompile will accept. And currently I'm working on creating an alternative Sage implementation, or let's say a collection of Sage script to test for correctness. So we're generating a bunch of arbitrary elliptic curves and trying to do some gas metering and see that things work well and try to come up with gas costs. I think that the main messages that he wanted to pass, he wrote it as comments in the agenda, is that there is a desire to expand the interface for all the operations, additions, multiplications, multi-exponentiations, for not only for the G1 group, but also for G2. And currently, there is only one implementation that Alex is working on, and there is no one yet that expressed a will to make Go or C++ implementation. Think besides that, it's pretty complete from his side, I think, and I'm trying to help making verify that this thing works well.
Excellent. I see this is very complete. This even has benchmarks and some test cases already in the code base.
Yep.
So that's excellent. There is a discussion thread on ETH Magicians, and Kobe, if you can go to the All Core Devs chat and just sometime next week, maybe early next week, just prod the chat to go to that forum and discuss it a little bit. That's going to be the next step forward for this specific EIP.
Sure, awesome.
Okay. Thank you. And yeah, if you could also let Alex know, since he wasn't able to make it, and
Of course.
this will be another one on the list for me or James to catch up with.
Great, I will let you know.
Cool. Was that the only one from you for now, or was there another one you need to represent Alex for?
That's the only one.
Okay. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks.
This one was listed as exclusive of 1829. It's one or the other. How does that debate stand?
So I'll tell you what I know about it, but maybe there's someone else has more opinions. So 1962 can supersede 1829. It includes whatever is there, but it's a big superset of it. It includes much more.
So we'd get all of the one that is superseding if we did yours?
So yeah, exactly. The 1962 is the one that is superseding. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Oh, 1829 is the precompile for elliptic curve linear combinations. And if I recall, I think Remco was okay with that, but I could be completely wrong, so we need to reach out to Remco as well.
That sounds right to me, too.
Okay. We can look in previous notes as well. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Action item 61.1, the ganache spec, just a second.
Hudson.
Yeah, I thought I was going to sneeze. Sorry. What was it, James?
We have skipped over 62.10.
Oh, we did. EIP 2024 discussion required between James, Casey, and Zachary. What's the update on that, guys?
So we went through the EIP 2024 a little bit. Where we left off last time was that we wanted to go back and benchmark, proposals here. And so the Keep team has taken on technical champion for this and has put together a great proposal in EIP poll 2129. So this goes back to the original EIP 152 take on it, where we want to implement the F compression function instead of the whole Blake 2B function. This gives us a lot, smaller changes to the code base, as well as letting developers use it, use all of Blake 2's features without needing the core Ethereum devs to support all of those. Keep has put together an implementation and benchmarks for this, which you can find in their repo. They already have it, building in Guess, I believe. And so the benchmarks are extremely promising. F compression is, like taking nanoseconds per op. And basically the F compression approach is superseding the straight Blake 2 precompile approach right now. Matt just posted the links in chat for everyone.
Awesome. James, who's running the Blake 2B stuff right now?
Which
Someone
James?
is James. Probably James Hancock, James.
Oh, all right, great. James Hancock, James. Sorry.
Yeah, I've been driving the community side, so I've been working with them on that.
Oh, okay. Yep. Has there been any word on if this is a good idea? Has this been discussed within that group?
Yeah, it's definitely look forward for both the Ethereum side and the Zcash side are looking forward to be able to do interoperability. The kind of the last question for the for the group is, should 2S also be included as supported? And if that is, then we would need to add a separate precompile for that as well.
So my take on this, I've spoken to the Handshake team and the Saya team as well, and they're very excited about this. No production chain uses 2S. Honestly, it's almost never used anywhere that I'm aware of, and I don't think that I don't think that we get enough benefit from implementing it to justify a precompile.
Oh, isn't it used in Zcash?
Only
It's a nice to have.
It's only used within the join splits and shielded proofs. It's not used in any other part of the consensus. And because we essentially can't verify those in Ethereum anyway reliably, I don't think we actually get real benefits from implementing it.
You would be able to verify them with the new elliptic curve precompiles that will hopefully also make it into Istanbul.
Verifying them within Ethereum doesn't provide any benefits to Ethereum contracts because we're limited to SPV security. The same way verifying Bitcoin transaction signatures doesn't add any security to BTC Relay.
Okay, that makes sense. I think there might be one use case for Flake 2S though, which is reusing the same Zcash circuit, the new Zcash circuit in in Ethereum contracts and verify snarks with the new elliptic curve precompiles, but
So Matt helpfully posted a link to Zuko and the Zcash team's take on this, and they're still saying that it's a nice to have in their opinion. They don't think it's necessary. I also think it would be a very nice to have, and I'm not saying we should never do this, but for the purpose of this discussion, we have a great implementation of the Blake 2B F compression function. We have good benchmarks, and I don't want to let 2S block that.
Yeah, fair enough. And yeah, I'd like to see it's good progress, good seeing the progress on the ZIP.
We're happy to extend to 2S, and I think I speak for the Keep team as well when I say that. We can get this done and in, but I don't want to make it a blocker for the EIP process.
Yeah, I'm not seeing a lot of people speak up for 2S. And the only one we can think of is that Zcash one that Casey talked about. So I would think that because the Blake 2B people already like the one that James Prestwich is recommending, that we should go forward with that. Is there other opinions in the room about whether or not this should go into Istanbul, or if it would be hard to implement, things like that? Because the IP seems fairly complete from what I can tell, and it would help a lot of different precompiles that are wanting to be in there from different projects.
I would move for, if it's a nice to have, that it should go into a next fork when it becomes a more than nice to have.
Go ahead, James Prestwich.
Sorry, I was just going to answer Alex's question in chat real quick. 2129 is the most current version.
And I'll put those all together into one and get them into the right format.
Wonderful. I see this as more than a nice to have, though. I see this as something that would satisfy the long time want of the Blake 2B being in there, and then the recent want of Handshake and Sia and stuff like that, wanting to be kind of adaptable to Ethereum.
Oh, I was meaning the Blake 2S part of it.
Yeah, let's put Blake 2S.
Oh.
Yeah, the Blake 2S is the nice to have. The Blake 2B is the must have for all of those things to happen.
And
perfect.
One of the major reasons that we moved back to the F compression function approach is that Handshake and Saya both use customized variations of Blake 2B. And so using the F compression function gets us maximum coverage on any possible Blake 2B variation.
Sounds great to me. Who else likes this, or who else doesn't like this?
I like it. So we put 2B on Istanbul and we put 2S on the April 2020 fork.
To be clear, you're meaning James Prestwich's EIP and not the 2B EIP that's alone, right?
Sure. I'm okay with either of them.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we put the one that's all encompassing, and then SV or 2S can be in the future. Is my mic sounding better now, by the way? I tried to fix it.
Yes.
Great. You know those like ones that like stick out a little bit and you have to like adjust it? It was like literally up on my head and I didn't notice it. So it was like getting mic sounds from my hair probably. Um, okay, let's go forward with this then. It doesn't sound like there's anybody opposed to it and it would benefit the ecosystem a lot, and I'm seeing a lot of people say yes. This might be the first EIP that's actually a full on, is totally approved for Istanbul, so that's great.
And
Okay,
and Alex
next.
said something about there should a longer discussion regarding the benchmarks and the feasibility of Blake 2N and EVM. And I can once I get the EIPs consolidated into one place, and then looking at the benchmarks, I can send those and talk with you about that, Alex.
Okay, great. Next we have item 61.1, the Ganache spec compliance issue at Go Ethereum. Is anyone from Ganache here who can speak on that? Okay, we'll table that one and keep it on. Cat herders to look at updating EIP1. That's PR 1991. Is there any update on that from the cat herders?
So a lot of people left some really good feedback. I posted an update to based on people's feedback last week. So if anyone who's interested in this wants to have a look, there's a newer version up now.
Excellent. We'll keep that on the actions required list so we can keep looking back on that. And we have made it through all of the many actions required, and we can go back to the main agenda now, where we'll run through the rest of this. Okay, so going back to the EIPs in section 2 of the agenda, we have 1962. Whoa, what did I do here? 16. I meant EIP 1679, but did I also mean 1962? Someone can speak up if they want to speak on 1962. I don't think I meant to put that there. 1679, the hard fork meta, we already discussed that. Under there's the dependency map. Take a look at that, everyone, and if there is something you can contribute to solving part of that dependency map, for instance, if you see an EIP on there that's yours, but you want to withdraw, that would help us clear up that map a whole lot. And we're also going to need to work on that little by little to see which EIPs are actually going to go in. That's too much to do all today, though. The Ethereum network upgrade windows, EIP 1872, which is a meta EIP, was Dano's. Dano, has there been further discussion on Ethmagicians about that? I think we've kind of decided that the next one would be April, kind of. Is that what this reflects?
That reflects that. And also I want to make sure that there is buy-in, that we ship to a particular third Wednesday of a month to provide flexibility for people planning vacations. I mean, the allusion to this is Patch Tuesday. A lot of IT folk will not go on vacation on a week containing the second Tuesday of the month in case Microsoft releases a real big stinker that they have to fix. So by supporting this schedule that we release on the third Wednesday of a month, the node operators know that if something's going to be rolled back within 24 hours, they need to be on the job during that week in case things go wrong. Ideally, it's going to be a boring week, but it's like landing an airplane. It's either boring or terrifying.
Got it. What do people think of that? I love the idea.
I also like the idea, but just to echo Martin from Awkward Dev's Gitter this week, I think he had some concerns about we perhaps want this to be an even smaller window. Yeah, it's worth highlighting that there was still some discussion around, do we want like single EAP hard forks and that type of stuff. Yeah.
So there is flexibility. The roadmap, the big composite ones, would be every 3 months, but there was a priority upgrade that could be any third Wednesday, and of course the criticals can be whenever we need it. But the question I guess is, do we go away from these larger hard fork clusters, or do we just ship every third Wednesday with whatever we have?
Ah, I see. And I know Martin was really um, vociferous about that.
And I would add, Alexi has also had that echoed that the shorter is more.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so this needs more discussion.
Yeah.
So we'll push to discuss this more on the Eth Magicians forum. And luckily, this isn't something that has to be decided quite immediately because we're kind of in the middle of Istanbul
Yeah,
land.
let's table it for a month.
Okay, sounds good to me. Next up, we have EIP 1109 precompiled call opcode, remove call cost for precompiled contracts. Did we already go through that? That sounds familiar. Is this another one that's a precompiled call
It
opcode?
was the two options.
Yeah, we went
Oh,
through that
that's
earlier.
Jordy. Okay, okay. I was really scared that was a third or fourth one. Okay. Uh, so EIP 695 is one. If you click on it, it goes to a comment below that Felix wanted to discuss about a minor RPC spec change regarding RNS signature values. Everyone, Carver seemed to like that idea. Um, is Felix on the call?
No, he's out for a moment until next week. He'll be back next week.
Oh, okay. We'll just talk about this in 2 weeks. It doesn't seem pressing to me. In fact, it's actually just a network EIP, so it's not even in Istanbul, but it is one we wanted to discuss and finalize. Okay, next up we have working group updates. I don't think Alexi's here. Oh, and the link's broken.
Could
Great.
we go back to a series of EIPs that didn't get discussed that's on the map that I think is critical?
Yeah,
And
sure.
that has to do with the account versioning.
Yes,
There was
thank you.
some rumblings about how some of these gas costs might open up other bugs like we had with 1283 that we just don't know about. And one of the things mentioned on the Gitter chat is if we had account versioning for all gas prices change, and have each frame apply to the version that the account is within, then that would isolate most of those issues. So I want to make sure that we get some consideration of account versioning for Istanbul. James, you had something?
Just from the AMA, there was a lot of quiet days and a lot of loud days, and the loudest day was around account versioning, and there is 8 or 9 EIPs that depend on a decision being made to the account versioning EIPs that are also trying to get into Istanbul.
Was there any direction approve or disapprove of this, or was it unknown?
The favorite is 1702, I think. The order of the graph has been changed since I looked at it last. Hopefully that is still right. But there are still some questions that have to be added to the need to be answered, clarified.
Okay, let's make sure that we put this as a priority to figure out before the next 2 weeks, and just make a decision in 2 weeks regardless. Because we do need to pick one of them, it sounds like.
My opinion is, except for precompiles, every other EIP hinges on this decision and will be affected by it. And this is the most important change we could make in Istanbul at this point.
Okay. Sounds good. And who's championing this for this? Is it just different authors for different EIPs?
It's way.
Got it. Do you have any comments, Wei, on this, or just bring it offline to the discussion forums?
Which one?
What was the number? Yep, account
Yeah,
version.
1702.
So I think at this moment, I think I managed to convince most people, including the EIP 615 team, that the EIP 7002 variant 1 is probably a better option we can have at this moment for conversioning. It suits most all the other EIP needs, and also one issue we discussed is about upgradable contracts. I think our current conclusion is that uh, uh, if a upgradable contract want to upgrade is a conversion, it will use slightly more gas codes, but it will have no issue with that. So that's probably acceptable. And another reason I think we may prefer variant 1 to variant 2 is that we introduce like there's little technical debt can be introduced if we want to change from variant 1. If we deploy variant 1 first and then want to change to variant 2 is doable. But if we deploy variant 2 first and then want to change it to variant 1, then that's a little bit harder. So yeah, that's the current general comments on a conversion. So I think the preference right now is probably variant 1.
So variant 1 is where we add the extra field and the absence means version 0. And variant 2 is where we also do variant 1 and add in prefix bytes to the contracts. Was that what the two variants were?
Yeah, so variant 2 like have a like defines that all the future version must have a prefix contracts, a code prefix, and variant 1 just says just make this prefix optional and deploy the version of create to opcode and contract creation transaction in a determined way. So it's the version of the contracts deployed for variant 1 is based on either the parent contracts or always the newest version.
So variant 1 can be done and then variant 2 can be added on in addition in a later hard fork.
Yeah, but I'm not sure we actually want variant 2 or we want to go a different route because there are listed several extensions we can do that can also add all the like use create 2 to deploy multiple versions of from the same account in a more backward compatible way. So that may be something we can also consider. But I consider the variant 1 to be the really base layer that we can do right now, and it will be already useful by itself.
Roger that.
Okay, great. So it's seeming like we're starting to come toward a consensus on version 1. Are there very many outstanding questions from people when this discussion happened, or are there any are there any other EIP teams that are championing an alternative to this that are very passionate? Not sure if these questions can be answered, by the way, so if they can't, that's okay.
Uh, is that a question to me or?
Oh, to you or anyone?
Yeah, I think the only issue we discussed is just about the upgradable contracts, and for I think the conclusion is for proxy contracts they had no problem because they use delegate call, and for other type of upgradable contracts you can first change it to a proxy contract pattern, and then from that point you can upgrade the version of the contracts. So that's the issue we discussed. And previously, it's just about the EIP 615 team thinking it may be like always having a prefix for our account, maybe better for external tools to read to understand which the version is a code and to understand the code. But I think the general consensus right now is that we don't necessarily need to make the code deployed on chain and the code that we put into external tools to be the same. So for code we put into external tools, we can include a version somewhere as a structure, but that part does not necessarily need to be on chain. So I think that's the two issue we discussed. And yeah.
Okay. Um, that sounds good. Does anyone? I think we can decide this today. Personally, it sounds like there's been a lot of discussion on it, and it's leaning toward version one heavily. Anybody have any objections to that, or think there needs to be further discussion? Okay, we're gonna go ahead with version one of that EIP and take note of that as something that is approved for Istanbul. Hooray! Let's go back to the agenda. Where was I?
I instantly can sleep better now.
That's great. Um, so we were. What other EIPs are super important to talk about from that list? James, Hancock, or anyone else want to comment on that since we have another 20 minutes and the rest of this isn't as important?
Those were the big ones. We hit the two big decision trees. Yeah, we
Great.
talked about all of the decision trees that need to be addressed.
Cool. Okay. Um, so let's go ahead. There's the working group updates. Well, does anyone have any working group updates that they want to mention? I only see a few people who leads that are here. I know Rick's here. Um, and I think that's the only person here who's a lead. I might be wrong. Any updates from you, Rick, or anybody else?
Um, I don't think there's anything super pressing I'd want to discuss. And for future reference, James can usually speak on my behalf if I'm not here. Um, I think the main sort of thing that has come up recently is, and it definitely came up in the discussion during this all core devs, is, how are we going to test these kinds of changes? I don't think that the traditional style of test nets, like the current test nets that are out there, are really appropriate, because they're not gonna. We want to be able to build out smaller, more precise, test nets that are still relatively large, like bigger than what we would run on a single developer's machine, but smaller and more ephemeral than what we have with the traditional test nets. And so I'd like to hopefully, I actually have to go, but hopefully discussion can start somewhere about how we should coordinate the development of those test environments.
Okay, excellent. Let's start having discussions on that. That'll be kind of more back burner compared to the Istanbul EIPs, but something to definitely consider.
Well, that would need to be done for Istanbul EIPs, because an intersection of that, of what Rick's talking about, and testing for gas costs. It's just the all of these need to be tested before they go in and have some kind of environment to do that. So that is very critical to Istanbul.
It is. I was more interpreting this as certain, like the fee market change is an economic change, and that's why it would need some type of test net that's more ephemeral. But I could be interpreting that wrong. Rick, were you talking about the Istanbul EIPs, or
Oh, I
do you
was
feel
just
that it's
talking in
applicable to those?
general for EIP 1559. We have that requirement, and then if you start looking at things like, well, if we're going to merge EIP 1559 with a gas fee change, we would need to test both separately and then test them again together. So it's these types of situations where you're going to need to be running a lot of fairly complicated tests that interact with each other, where I don't think leaving it up to the public network, a public test net, really makes a lot of sense. Like, I feel like public test nets are more for dApp developers than protocol developers. We don't, because we have to, we're actually changing the consensus code. So the network has to shut down while we're doing that, obviously, right? So that was sort of my thinking there.
Ah, got it. Take a look at Whiteblock's open sourced testing environment and testing tools. That allows you to spin up a network really quickly that has a lot of different
Yeah,
stuff
so
on
we
it.
did.
Unless
We are in conversations with them, and we did look at it, and I think the source, the code, has some. There's some interesting upsides for I think the Ethereum Foundation with regards to that code. The problem, as I see it, which is not, maybe it's more of a concern than a problem, really, is that it's a SaaS platform. So there's a subscription model, and then there's devs that are the shepherds of that infrastructure that are at Whiteblock. So I don't know if that's really perfectly incentive aligned with the foundation, right? I mean, I think there's some serious benefits to the foundation to using that sort of system, but it's not. I don't know how to even go through the process of determining if that's something that the foundation wants to support, or if the foundation wants to roll their own infrastructure, or how we want to have that discussion.
Sure, as long as it's open. So the main thing that I've heard of in the past is the fact that it's open sourced. I know that from talking to Zach before, for using it with something like the Ethereum Foundation, I think we would get some kind of credits for the SaaS model, similar to when we work with AWS or Azure or Cloudflare and they want to donate certain stuff about their SaaS platforms or their server infrastructure or donate credits, we definitely take up on that. So we can have further discussions about that. I don't see how it would not be incentive aligned as long as we're not having to, if it helps us a lot, and as long as we're not picking winners necessarily on something that isn't open source.
Right. It's
But I
it's
think
just to
it's
be clear that for me the issue is um, the sort of the when you pay for a SaaS platform, what are you paying for exactly, and what sort of long term relation? I don't want to. For me, as a grant recipient, right, I have a fixed amount of money for a fixed amount of time. So hiring a subscription service for me doesn't make sense. And then if you think about every person who's a grant recipient doing that, we're basically multiplying the cost. And now, are we competing for the resources at White Block? I mean, that doesn't make a lot of sense, and that's not really a good use of money, right? We would need some level of coordination between each individual group hiring this company. And do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I see that. There is a DevOps team at the Ethereum Foundation that coordinates with teams specifically, and they kind of become the subject matter experts on certain tools such as Ansible and Terraform and deploy those things for teams to use. For instance, the Swarm team has a ton of Ansible and Terraform infrastructure that the DevOps team runs. So I see this as fitting in very well with that, where the budget for DevOps at the Ethereum Foundation covers this. But I'd love to take this offline with you so that I can make sure the concerns are very clearly articulated to me, and then I can go back to both White Block and the EF about this, especially since you're a grant recipient and that is going to affect your budget and other people's budgets potentially.
Okay. And I guess I want to put one other final issue on the record with that. Again, I'm a big fan of the White Block stuff, so I think this issue would come up with anyone. But just it's also the cross team coordination, right? As we have patches that touch the same thing, or for example, the thing that Casey was talking about at length earlier on. If we change the gas fee market with EIP 1559, then all that research he does kind of goes out the window, right? So we have to coordinate these patches when they interfere with each other on the testing side as well.
Okay, cool. That is noted. Thank you. Um, I'm looking here and I think, oh, there was a note for a quick update on Blake 2B by Matt Luongo, and I believe Matt's in here. Matt, are you
We
here?
already did that. Yeah,
Oh,
that
yeah,
was
we did
and
because we
yep,
covered.
and it was approved. So
Yeah.
here we go.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Is there any client teams or research teams or otherwise that want to update anything about their clients? Throw out an update or announcement.
Pantheon.
Sure.
So I was going to announce this 2 weeks, actually a month ago, but we have had ETHQL shipping in Pantheon in our current updates for a month. It was the result of a Gitcoin hackathon submission and it works per spec. So if you want to play around with ETHQL, you can do it in the current release of Pantheon.
Is ETHQL that smart contract language that's like SQL?
Sorry, not ETHQL. You're right. I got it wrong. GraphQL, and it's like kind of like
GraphQL.
We don't have ETHQL. GraphQL superseded it. It was like EIP 7 some odd number, but it's the GraphQL spec that was all the rage at the hackathons.
Okay, perfect. And I think Google also did a giant thing on that, if I recall. Didn't fully understand it, but they did something with GraphQL and Ethereum. Is there anyone else who has an update? I think we actually got through this with 10 minutes to spare. I'm surprised.
Just to verify, it was 2024 from the account versionings that's going through.
Way, is it 2024 version 1?
It's 1702.
1702.
Yeah,
Okay.
1702.
That was a close one. Okay. If there's no other comment, go ahead.
Are there any constants we need to fix on that? Is version 1 going to be the version number that will be set when you create a contract now?
It will be like right now, for all the legacy, like legacy, it's existing contracts, they will have version 0, and we need to define a new version for all features included, and they may be version 1, or we can give it another random integer number. It doesn't matter.
Okay, we'll paint the bike shed in the Gitter chat.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Wonderful. Thanks, everyone. Oh, wait. I forgot the one last thing. Should we have the meetings at different times to facilitate people like Nick Johnson and others in that the part of the world that's like Asia and New Zealand and Australia, that it's like the middle of the night for them? What do people think of that?
I would support it. I kind of brought that idea up. The idea is that there would be an 8-hour shift for each meeting, so that I would be meeting in the morning, and then I'd be meeting in the evening, and then I would need to wake up in the middle of the night. So that way, each major time zone would only have to wake up in the middle of the night once every month and a half. And for 2/3 of the time, they have a rational daylight time to call into these meetings.
Okay. That sounds like a pretty good plan. And that would happen on. We would still have that on Fridays then?
Friday
Well, no,
GMT, there'd be
that would have to be on Thursday because Fridays for some people and Thursday for others.
That's right. Yeah.
So I think one would be +8 from the current time, and one would be -8 from the current time, whatever it is.
Yeah, that will have to be -8. Otherwise, Europe ends up at in the night. So yeah, it's got to be evening in Australia, morning in Europe, and evening the day before in the Americas.
It would be Thursday evening in the Americas, and then Berlin it would be morning, and then Asia it would be afternoon. Did I get that right?
At least that's the way I understand it, so that everybody gets included.
Okay, and the thing I wanted to avoid, if possible, is like people like to do stuff Friday evenings, because it's the weekend. So, is there a time shift that we can do that gets us into like Thursday/Friday? Did we just describe that?
We
I
could do
couldn't keep
-8
up.
and -16 from the current meeting time.
Yep.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. Um, -8, -16. Yeah, let's do something like that. I don't think that's gonna. I think that the ETH 2.0 calls are on alternating weeks from us, so they're never in the same week as ours. So that would be fine. Okay, let's do that. Anyone oppose?
Just to make sure I understand, so -8 from the current time, -16 from the current time. Yeah. Because
Yes.
-8 is exactly what I described.
That would be exactly what it is. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, -16. Okay, cool.
Okay. Um, I will announce that in the Gitter chat and start putting down for my personal calendar what shifts those are every 2 weeks. So -8 and -16 from the current time of 9 a.m. my time. Okay. I'm sure Nick will be happy about that as well as others in the Asia time zone who might want to participate. Anybody else have anything?
Yeah, just a quick comment.
Yeah.
I was talking with Zach, right? I from White Block. I mentioned what Rick had said, and he wanted me to just remind everybody that their stuff is open source. So people are free to use it like that, and he's open to talking about like how they can support the people working on EIPs that need testing that maybe might not be able to do a complete software purchase or a SaaS purchase.
Cool. No, that's nice of them. And thanks for bringing that up with Zach,
Yep.
Trent. Um, okay. If there's nothing else, then we will see you in 2 weeks. Minus. Oh, wait. Are we doing -8 or -16 first?
Doesn't matter. Pick one.
It's up to you.
Ooh, I'm the decider.
I would advise
Who has a
-8
preference?
first, because -16 is gonna put Europe at 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. So I'm not sure you'll get a lot of takers, and there's a lot of core devs in Europe.
Yeah, let's take -8 because we need Martin to call in.
Okay. -8 it is. All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Goodbye.
Care.
We did it. Hooray.